I've been using this for a while now, so I figured I would share some thoughts. Sitting here with it right in front of me, the main thing I noticed on day one is that it does not feel like a typical electric bicycle. It feels closer to a small motorcycle that happens to have pedals. If you want something light, easy to carry upstairs, or something you can pedal like a normal bike for exercise, this is not that. If you want a compact, motor-focused ride for dirt roads, fire trails, rough city streets, and short hops where you care more about acceleration and stability than being nimble, this makes more sense. The frame feels solid, and the whole bike has that tall stance. The seat on my unit is thicker than I expected, and it sits a little lower than some earlier versions I have tried from this style of bike. That helped more than I thought it would. I can ride longer without my legs and lower back feeling annoyed. The riding position is upright enough that I am not folded over the bars, and the seat foam is not a thin pad. It is still a small moto-style seat, so it is not a couch, but it is workable for real riding. The weight is the first practical issue. This thing is over 100 pounds. I learned fast that I need to treat it like a light motorcycle, not like an electric bicycle. Moving it around a garage is fine. Lifting it is not something I want to do often. Loading it into a vehicle takes planning. If you live in an apartment and you have stairs, you are going to feel that weight every single time. Setup was not the smoothest for me, and I want to be honest about that because it matters with bikes like this. My box showed up looking a little beat up. Nothing was destroyed, but it told me I should not assume everything inside was perfectly adjusted. The manual did not really walk me through much in a useful way. Before I rode it, I went over the bike with basic tools and checked the bolts that matter. I found a couple that were not fully snug. I also checked the spoke tension because a heavy electric bike with a hub motor puts a lot of stress back there. I added a little thread locker to hardware that I do not want vibrating loose. That 1 hour of checking things saved me problems later, and I would do the same again. In daily use, what stands out is how direct it feels. The throttle response is quick. It is the kind of quick that makes you pay attention the first time you touch it, especially if you are coming from a commuter-style electric bicycle. On pavement, it jumps forward with barely any input. On dirt, that same response is fun, but it also means you need to be smooth or you will break traction on loose surfaces. It has 2 ride modes that actually change how it behaves. In the city mode, it feels limited on purpose, and I mean that in a good way. It keeps the speed down around 28 miles per hour and the power delivery is calmer. In the off-road mode, it feels like it takes the leash off. That is the mode I use on dirt roads and open areas where I have room. With my weight and my riding gear, on flat ground, I was regularly seeing top speeds in the mid-40s in miles per hour. On a slight downhill, tucked in, I have touched a bit higher. I did not get a clean 52 miles per hour on level pavement, so if you are chasing the highest number you have heard online, my experience was more like strong acceleration into the 40s. Then it settles in. Where it surprised me most was climbing. It has the torque to pull up grades that would slow down or stall a lot of regular electric bicycles. It does not feel like it is begging for help. It just keeps pushing, and that makes it useful if your area has steep streets or loose gravel climbs where a weaker bike starts to struggle. Stopping power is another real point in its favor. The hydraulic brakes on my unit feel closer to what I expect from a small motorcycle than what I expect from a bicycle. The lever feel is predictable, and I can add braking gradually instead of getting that on-off feeling you sometimes get with cheaper setups. I did some longer downhill runs, and I did not feel the brakes fading out on me. That matters because the bike is heavy, and speed plus weight means you need brakes you can trust. Suspension is firm, but it works. On broken pavement, gravel, and mild trail riding, it takes the sharpness out of the hits. I can hold speed over rough surfaces without feeling like the bike is shaking itself apart. I would not call it a jump bike. The rear wheel has a hub motor, and that puts a lot of weight in the wheel itself. In real riding, that makes the back end feel planted, but not playful. If you are the kind of rider who likes to pop the bike over every bump, the rear can feel heavy, and it reminds you that there is a lot of mass back there. The display is simple and readable in daylight. It gives me the basics I actually use, like speed, battery status, and trip information. At night, I wish I had more control over brightness. On my unit it felt like it stayed pretty bright, and I would have liked a way to dim it more. The lighting is fine for being seen and for slower riding after dark. I can see where I am going at moderate speeds, but I still ride cautiously at night because any light on a bike like this has limits once you start going faster. Battery and range are where expectations need to be realistic. The battery is a 60-volt, 30-amp-hour pack, and on paper that sounds huge. In real life, how far you go depends almost entirely on how you ride. When I was cruising around 25 to 35 miles per hour with stops in some mixed terrain, I usually got around 20 to 25 miles. If I rode harder, used off-road mode a lot, and did hills, I had rides drop into the 12 to 15-mile range. If I bobbied it in city mode and stayed smoother and slower, I could stretch it further. But the whole point of this bike is that it is quick, so I think most people will ride it that way. Charging from close to empty took me around 8 to 10 hours with the included charger. The battery is removable, which I used a lot because I do not always want to bring the whole bike near an outlet. The battery is heavy though. I carry it with both hands, and I do not love doing that every day. One practical tip from my own riding is not to trust only the battery bars. When you accelerate hard, the battery indicator can drop and then bounce back when you cruise. Voltage tells a more honest story about what you have left, especially when you are riding at higher speeds. Pedaling is present, but I do not treat this like a pedal bike. The gearing and the weight make it awkward for real pedaling workouts. I use the pedals for starts, slow maneuvering, and sometimes just to keep my feet in a good position when I am coasting. There is a pedal assist sensor, and it does wake the motor when I start turning the cranks, which helps in traffic and on loose climbs. Still, I would not buy this thinking I am going to pedal home like a normal bicycle if the battery is low. You can move it, but it is work. Reliability for me has been a mix of solid and a little annoying. I had flats early on, especially on the rear. With the weight and torque, the rear tire takes a beating. Checking tire pressure before each ride made a difference, and adding sealant helped. I also had a charger act up once where it would cut out before finishing. Support did respond through messages, but it was not fast. It took days, and then the replacement showed up and it has been okay since. I also had one intermittent power cut that felt like a controller or connection issue. In my case, race seating connectors and cleaning contacts fixed it. After that, I started keeping an eye on anything electrical, especially if I ride in wet conditions. I added light sealing around the battery door area, and I keep the contacts clean and dry. Since doing that, I have not had repeat problems, but it did remind me that this kind of bike rewards basic maintenance. I also do regular bolt checks. The kickstand area, brake hardware, and axle nuts are the ones I do not ignore. And after the first few rides, I check spoke tension. That is not me being overly cautious. This is a heavy, fast bike with a lot of vibration and load, and things can loosen if you never check them. So who is this for, based on how it actually behaves? I think it makes sense for someone who wants that small moto feel, likes quick acceleration, and rides mixed terrain like rough streets, gravel, dirt roads, and trails that are not super technical. I also think it fits someone who does not mind doing basic wrenching or at least inspecting the bike regularly. If you want something you can ignore for months like a simple commuter bike, this might frustrate you. The strengths in my experience are the strong pull, the confident braking, and the way the suspension and seating make rough surfaces easier to live with. The limitations are the weight, the realistic range when you ride it fast, and the fact that you need to stay on top of basic maintenance. And you also need to pay attention to local rules, because in off-road mode it is beyond what many places consider a typical street legal electric bicycle. Overall, I keep coming back to the same thought. When I treat the Freego X2 Pro like a small electric motorcycle with pedals, it makes sense and it is fun to ride. When I expect it to behave like a normal electric bicycle, the weight and range realities show up quickly. I'll leave the details about the Freego X2 Pro in the comments for you to check out. See you in the next video.